welcome to everybody from Brussels. Good afternoon from the sunny Brussels. I'm very excited that so many of you are connected to our workshop. Welcome to all the participants and the speakers to this workshop on rebooting the economy, sustainability, growth and climate action delivered by the bioeconomy. My name is Peter Verheim. I'm the head of unit within the European Commission Department for Research and Innovation. My team and I, we are responsible for the bioeconomy and food systems. It's really a great pleasure that we can welcome you to this 3-hour workshop. On the slide, which you see here on the starting screen, a small typo occurred. We plan to be together with you for the next 3 hours until 7 o'clock. It's a pity that we can't meet physically in Berlin, which was originally planned for the entire Global Bioeconomy Summit. Instead, we have to meet virtually, and obviously, for all of us, the COVID crisis has a significant impact. In fact, the pandemic has had and continues to have also significant negative effects on economies all around the world. In many parts of the world, including in the EU, reflections at the same time have already started on how to exit and recover from this crisis, and the respective strategies are in the making. Only yesterday, I read in my local newspaper here in this Belgium region in Wallonia, where I live, that this region has launched a public consultation on its Get Up Wallonia recovery plan. Similarly, Italy has developed a recovery instrument called to get out of the crisis. The European Union has also developed a recovery instrument called Next Generation EU, with an indicative budget of 750 billion. This recovery package, once adopted, will support EU member states in their efforts to recover, repair, and emerge stronger from the crisis while accelerating transition. Hence, recovery plans are really being conceptualized currently around the globe, and we therefore would like to use this workshop today to discuss which role the bioeconomy could play in such recovery packages. Needless to say that the working assumption is that the bioeconomy, which combines economic growth with enhanced environmental performance, can play an important role in both the recovery and the green transition. From our point of view, the bioeconomy can help to align the economy with the planetary boundaries of the biosphere. Investing in innovative bioeconomy solutions can also help to facilitate a just transition, as it can help to revive rural and coastal areas. Hence, the point of departure for this workshop is the assumption that the COVID crisis offers the chance to build back better by investing into a sustainable and green bioeconomy. The bioeconomy can make our economy fit for the future. Against this background, this, as I said, 3-hour workshop will provide an opportunity to brainstorm at least on 2 topics. The first one being looking for concrete opportunities for the within the sustainable and circular bioeconomy to make local and national economies more resilient, to stimulate sustainable growth for the COVID-19 recovery, and to facilitate, thirdly, the green transition towards a carbon neutral future. So we basically would like to touch upon 2 issues. On the one hand, the what options for recovery does the bioeconomy offer, and secondly, also the how. How can these operational solutions be scaled up and be implemented and included into recovery packages. I'm very happy that participants basically from all around the world are connected in the meantime to this workshop. Almost 100 people, colleagues from North and Latin America, from Asia, Africa, and from Europe. I will moderate this workshop, luckily not on my own, but with the strong support of my colleague Ann Bogdansky, who will co-chair this session together with me. Ann is a member of the International Advisory Council of the Global Bioeconomy Summit and is the program coordinator for sustainable and circular bioeconomy of FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Welcome, Ann. Very happy that you are joining us. However, before passing the floor on to you, we will have a short welcome message from Jean-Éric Paquet, who is the Director General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Hence, he's my boss, and he gave us a short welcome message of 5-6 minutes. So I would ask Natalie to please play this video now, and then over to you, Ann. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to open with you this workshop on rebooting the economy, sustainability, growth and climate action delivered by the bioeconomy. This workshop in the context of this Global Bioeconomy Summit, and I would like to thank the German presidency of the European Union to have associated the European Commission to this summit, is, I think, a great opportunity to take stock how across the globe, across multilateral governance system in countries and in society, the bioeconomy is fueling the recovery of our economies, and will of course also be very central in driving a sustainability and climate-friendly agenda as we move forward. As you know, in Europe we are now delivering a recovery and resilience package. The European Parliament and the ministers agreed only a few days ago on this overall investment package, 750 billion euros for the recovery and resilience part of it. And then, of course, the overall European Union budget, more than 1,000 billion over the next 7 years, is of course also very much geared at being a plank for these investments into recovery and resilience. But I'm sure you're also aware that for Europe, its green strategy, its Green Deal strategy is very much also its growth strategy. And therefore, for this recovery and resilience investment effort, we want to deliver it in Europe. We want member states to prepare implementation plans. At European Union level, we will develop policies in that direction as well, so that these investments not only allow Europe to build back better and repair our societies, but by doing that, at the same time, drive the green and digital transformations, which are Europe's, and I think largely the world's, key priorities today. The bioeconomy has, of course, a very visible, in some cases even rather central role to play in this investment agenda, but more importantly in driving these transformations, the green transformation particularly, but connected certainly for many of the actors of the bioeconomy also to the digital developments. I expect that in today's workshop you explore how bioeconomy actors can be part of that recovery and resilience effort, how bioeconomy actors can provide knowledge but deploy solutions to ensure that we will become a more climate neutral economy and society here in Europe, hopefully also in many other parts of the world, towards 2030 objectives, and then of course towards Europe's climate neutrality objective of 2050. I must say I'm very, very impressed by the fact that many of our partners recently Japan, China on a slightly longer term track, are also now looking to climate neutrality. And I very much expect that major players will also now very quickly come on board, and that the worldwide effort will go into that indispensable direction in line also with the Paris Agreement. Again, the bioeconomy has a key role to play also for low carbon solutions. A lot are already available. A lot were promoted in Europe also with research and innovation support of the Horizon 2020 program today. Also often very innovative solutions ready to go to market in terms of replacing plastic with nature-based biodegradable solutions, and other innovations promoted by the European Innovation Council, which has now been piloted for the last 2 years and will morph into a fully fledged European Innovation Council as of next year. All that promotes, spurs, allows bioeconomy actors to play their full part. I think it is quite obvious also that there are trade-offs around the bioeconomy in terms of biodiversity, in terms of sustainability, in terms of ensuring that bioeconomy solutions are effectively low-carbon solutions. And here also, I'm sure that during the workshop you will look at these trade-offs and try collectively. Collective intelligence is key in these transitions, that you will collectively identify a number of solutions, policy processes, concrete practical solutions, which can drive these green, resilience-oriented, recovery-oriented transitions and transformations for Europe as far as my teams are concerned, but then obviously on a much more global scale, as will be the discussion in the workshop, including with partners from the FAO, for example. So I wish you a very fruitful workshop, and I must say I'm very much looking forward to the outcome of the discussions and looking forward to the solutions which you will have identified. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for this nice welcome from the European Commission. Let me now welcome you also to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. We are here together with the European Commission as we are working on several issues related to the bioeconomy. We think that bioeconomy is a very important vehicle for the transition towards more sustainable agriculture, food systems. Let me start this introduction to the workshop here with the agenda. We are now in the middle of opening statements, and they will be followed by a welcome from our 4 distinguished speakers. Afterwards, we will split all participants into 4 breakout rooms for a 60-minute discussion. These rooms will be moderated by our partners who help to develop and shape this work, and we'll discuss the opportunities that different bioeconomy sectors and regions can offer for a recovery from COVID-19 while contributing to the core principles of sustainability, green and blue growth, and climate actions. The moderators from the French Grand East region and the BioVoices project for the discussion on the land-based bioeconomy. Then we will hear from the Submarine Network, who will moderate the discussion on the blue bioeconomy. The Power for Bio and the Bioeconomy Rural projects will facilitate the discussion on the bioeconomy at local level. And lastly, the BioEast Up project will lead the breakout room on the role of the bioeconomy in emerging economies. After a 10-minute break, we will commence with the closing plenary debate between our 4 speakers and end this workshop with some take-home messages and closing remarks. Further, we would like to get your feedback on a couple of questions by using Slido. Please have a look on the right. On the side of your screen, you will see the button to click on. And I would like to now test the tool with you with a first question. Yes, we can see it now, how you connect. I'll give you a moment to get there. And then we would like to ask you, from where are you connecting? So a very difficult question to start with. And we'll have 5 minutes to answer the question. Meanwhile, I would like to introduce our next speaker from the Grand Est region in France, one of the participants of this workshop, and the vice president of this region, Philippe Manguin, would like to highlight the role of the bioeconomy for regional development. Mr. Manguin could not attend in person, but he has recorded his statement.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour. Je suis Philippe Mangin, agriculteur de profession et vice-président de la région Grand Est, en charge de la bioéconomie et de l'agroalimentaire. La région Grand Est est l'une des 13 régions de la France métropolitaine. Elle a été créée en janvier 2016 de la fusion de 3 anciennes régions. Elle compte 5 560 000 habitants, possède une forte dimension industrielle et elle est particulièrement ouverte sur les marchés internationaux du fait de sa frontière avec 4 pays, la Belgique, le Luxembourg, l'Allemagne et la Suisse. La région Grand Est est l'une des toutes premières régions agricoles, forestières et viticoles de France. 3 millions d'hectares sont occupés par des terres agricoles parmi les plus productives de l'Europe. Près de 2 millions d'hectares sont recouverts de forêts au fort potentiel de production. Les vignobles de Champagne et d'Alsace figurent parmi les plus prestigieux. Nous disposons donc d'un potentiel de bioressources vraiment extraordinaire. Le paysage agro-industriel de notre territoire est ainsi très dense, marqué par de grands acteurs comme Tereos, Soufflé, Vivessia, leader dans le sucre, la meunerie, la malterie ou les biocarburants. Le monde académique, nos centres de recherche publics et privés, nos universités, tous ces acteurs ont pris ce contexte à bras-le-corps et sont pleinement mobilisés sur le potentiel de valorisation des bioressources. C'est donc tout naturellement que la région Grand Est, dès sa création, en élaborant son schéma de développement économique, a placé la bioéconomie comme l'une des toutes premières priorités de son action. Faire du Grand Est un des leaders européens de la bioéconomie, telle est notre ambition. Pour ce faire, nous avons d'abord organisé les États généraux de la bioéconomie. Rassemblant plus de 300 acteurs, ce forum participatif a permis l'élaboration d'une véritable feuille de route contenant 5 priorités. Définir des stratégies énergétiques à l'échelle locale. Soutenir le développement de bioraffineries territoriales. Développer des matériaux biosourcés pour construire et rénover les bâtiments. Déployer une alimentation plus saine avec des ingrédients biosourcés, des emballages durables, un approvisionnement de proximité. Enfin, à côté de l'agriculture biologique, initier une véritable transition agricole et alimentaire en développant notamment le biocontrôle. Ces priorités sont mises en œuvre sous le regard d'un conseil d'orientation stratégique composé des différentes familles d'acteurs et copiloté par la région et le pôle de compétitivité industrie agro-ressources. La région Grand Est a dégagé un budget annuel de 35 millions d'euros pour 5 ans et pour, in fine, un effet levier d'1,5 milliard. Cette ambition, nous souhaitons qu'elle soit comprise, acceptée et soutenue par nos concitoyens. Vous savez combien les contours de la bioéconomie sont encore vagues pour eux. Voilà pourquoi notre région se lance filière par filière dans une démarche contractuelle intégrant un objectif de durabilité. Nous avons agi ainsi pour la filière méthanisation, pour laquelle notre région est leader en France. Nous avons souhaité mettre fin à son développement anarchique. Tous les acteurs de la filière ont signé un contrat de développement de la méthanisation durable. Chaque unité de méthanisation doit être celle d'un territoire et ainsi garantir une ressource d'approvisionnement durable, proche, pour ne concurrencer ni la ressource alimentaire, ni celle des fourrages nécessaires à l'élevage. Nous avons aussi des exigences rigoureuses quant à l'usage et l'épandage des coproduits fertilisants issus de la méthanisation. La même démarche contractuelle est en cours s'agissant des biocarburants. Nous attribuerons un label aux biocarburants du Grand Est, assurant aux consommateurs qu'ils sont issus d'une agro-ressource régionale, produits et distribués dans des conditions irréprochables sur le plan environnemental. Notre soutien au développement des bioraffineries vise aussi à la valorisation des cultures locales et à conditionner ce soutien à une approche plug and play pour renforcer l'attractivité. Notre objectif est d'accompagner 30 industriels et de créer plus de 5000 emplois. Réduire l'usage des phytosanitaires, c'est proposer des solutions alternatives aux agriculteurs. Dans le cadre du programme national d'investissement d'avenir, notre projet Bioeco Academy a été retenu et leader de l'appel à projet Campus des métiers. Nous allons donc disposer d'un campus de référence sur les formations d'excellence de la bioéconomie. Ce programme de la bioéconomie, comme vous pouvez le constater, est en marche. La crise mondiale issue de la pandémie du Covid-19 est venue interroger plus encore nos modes de production et de consommation et rappeler l'urgence de s'adapter aux crises sanitaires, climatiques et écologiques. Dès le mois d'avril 2020, en plein confinement, notre président de région, avec les services de l'État, ont lancé l'élaboration d'un Business Act avec 800 interlocuteurs au cours de 80 forums pendant 5 semaines. Nous avons retenu 40 actions structurantes, parmi lesquelles 50 projets de bioéconomie durable seront soutenus d'ici 2025. 40 de ces 50 projets sont prêts à lancer. C'est le lien avec le territoire que possèdent ces projets qui nous rendent optimistes sur leur aboutissement. Mesdames et messieurs, j'espère vous avoir démontré par ces quelques éléments combien la région Grand Est voit en la bioéconomie l'occasion de faire émerger une nouvelle économie, tournée vers la transition énergétique, écologique et, j'ajouterai, numérique. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, écrivain français, poète et aviateur, écrivait La terre ne nous appartient pas. Ce sont nos enfants qui nous l'ont prêtée. La bioéconomie a fait sienne en région Grand Est de cette si belle citation. Merci de votre attention.
Let me thank Philippe Mangan for this excellent presentation. It was a good exercise for my French. I hope all the participants were able to listen and read what Mr. Mangan from the east of France said. I think that was really inspiring. It's an example of one region in Europe which has already taken a strong focus on the bioeconomy, and which continues to strengthen it in the context also of the economic crisis. Let's now very briefly look at the first results from the first Slido poll. Thank you for uploading this. I guess the time is best for these Europeans, but thank you also very much to the participants from Latin America, to the participants from North America and Africa who are joining us for this workshop. Your participation is very much appreciated, and I also hope that you will come in through the chat and later on when we have possibilities to ask questions and answers. And for Asia, one or two people seem to have connected now. Welcome also to you, even though for you it's in the middle of the night. Now, let's move on, and let me welcome again the first speaker of this first plenary, and that is Blake Simmons, the Division Director of Biological Systems and Engineering at the Berkeley Lab for Biosciences, and from California, where this summer also forest fires have had devastating effects. Blake has worked a lot on bioenergy solutions and biomass deconstruction, on nanotechnologies and nano-structured materials. So it's great to have someone from North America here in the workshop and a scientist. Blake, let me ask the first question. Obviously, the media around the world has been full with report about US presidential elections lately. The negative effects of the COVID crisis on the entire country were also an important part of the election campaign. And the United States have also been one of the countries significantly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, let me ask you, how do you see the role that the bioeconomy and also biorefineries could play in the recovery process from COVID in California and in the United States? Blake, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Peter. And can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
Yes, you great.
Okay, we have the digital support we need, so here we go. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the conference organizers for inviting me to be part of this proceeding. I think it's a great opportunity and great timing, and timing is everything. And when you're talking about the U.S. bioeconomy or the bioeconomy at large and responding to COVID-19, there are a couple of things that really jump to the fore, right? First is really understanding what the bioeconomy is today in terms of its size and magnitude and impact. And in the US alone, it's about $1 trillion of economic activity every year is in the bioeconomy, even in this early days, you know, as we consider it when we're working in the field. So the upside is huge. And we have a bioeconomy blueprint. Mary Maxon, who I think is in the audience and one of the conveners for this organization, this conference, wrote the first bioeconomy blueprint for the United States when she was serving under the Obama administration. And so what I'm going to be talking about is kind of a update to that, as well as where we think some opportunities are given the COVID-19 pandemic. And obviously, when you're talking about the bioeconomy and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the first one is around biotechnology and developing a vaccine or therapeutics for this modern blight that we're facing. And thankfully, it looks like we have some pretty good indicators of vaccines that are looking promising across the world. The first one out the door was the Russian vaccine. We'll see how that promulgates and is effective long term. We've had 2 recent vaccines in the United States from Moderna and Pfizer that look pretty promising, but they all have challenges in terms of deployment and community adoption. And it's just like, anywhere in the world you face those challenges. But the first and foremost pillar of a bioeconomy segment that could be bolstered by a COVID-19 response is that health area in the biotechnology arena for therapeutics for not only this pandemic, but also pandemics of the future, to make sure we're never caught unprepared like we are today, and have lived through the pain of a once in 100-year disease. But hopefully we won't do that again. Let's learn from this lesson and do our best to be better next time. That's first and foremost. If you're taking a look at other elements within the bioeconomy sector, I think it's also important to realize that we have a whole bunch of renewable sources of carbon on the planet that we can tap into. And that can come from the agricultural sector, that can come from municipal solid waste in terms of establishing circular bioeconomies, where you take everything from a product line and a value line, and you make sure that you trim all the losses and you recycle and reuse as much as you can to create a zero loss carbon-based perspective of an economy. And it's also important to note that as much as 60% of the physical inputs to the global economy could be produced biologically. And through the revolution in DNA, we're really poised to transform the economy just as the computer revolution did. And there's a lot of parallels between biotechnology and biomanufacturing in particular, with the computer and silicon chip industry, that I think we should talk a lot about today. I think the standardization of biotechnology and biomanufacturing, the establishment of biofoundries and a global biofoundries alliance would really go a long way to bringing biomanufacturing up to the same level that the Semitech effort did in the silicon chip industry. And I think there's a huge opportunity in developing better crops, better conversion, better products, and better materials that can really be a significant catalyst for the growth of the bioeconomy. I also think looking at some long-term carbon storage mechanisms, if we're talking about climate change and climate control, and mitigating the risk of another disaster in the form of climate change, coming up with ways that we could sequester carbon effectively, be it around C1 biomanufacturing, as we call it, or in terms of understanding carbon sinks at a global level and optimizing them in native ecosystems. We need to get carbon out of the atmosphere, and we need to prevent carbon from going in the atmosphere. And I think everybody who's informed on that topic can agree to that. And there's a whole bunch of myriad ways in which to do that. And I think it's going to take a global solution, obviously, because carbon doesn't stay on a point level above where it is emitted. It goes everywhere in the atmosphere. And so linking international programs along with national programs would be a great way to go about doing that. But there's a huge opportunity to me around C1 biomanufacturing, or decriminalizing carbon, if we could call it that, and really creating a value add to the economy and using it as a force multiplier for change, as opposed to something we suffer from. And we suffer from it because it's our own actions that allow us to do that. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to change the tune. We need to change the game and come up with new technologies that can efficiently manage carbon, view it as a solution, minimize the climate harm from it, and minimize the ecosystem damage and environmental and human health concerns as well. I also think there's a way to establish a bio-preferred program where you could incentivize industry and public domain functions for sure. In the United States, we already have the USDA bio-preferred program that has, I think, 30,000 to 40,000 products that are defined as better and greener. And if you could put those onto the world marketplace, incentivize behavior you want and disincentivize behavior you don't want, that would be a really great way to bolster the nascent bioeconomy and all the startups from across the world that are really trying to come up with products that displace carbon or petroleum at the very least, and then really make a difference in the marketplace. And that would really elevate GDP levels across the board. I don't think that would be a sector-based or a segment-based perspective that would only affect one nation over another, or another, the EU versus the US or Asia bloc countries. I think all boats would float higher as the waters rise in that particular event. And then I also think there's an opportunity for public-private partnerships that could really catalyze innovation. And I think there's a great opportunity on the global domain to really, I'll say, democratize or maybe globalize these public-private partnerships to really be something to be reckoned with, and really be an innovator that would not only do the great science, but would take the science and inform policy that could transform the landscape about what success looks like and how we get there. And it includes workforce development and education. We need to have the skilled labor force to do these jobs of the future. We need them now, by the way. We have a huge crunch in the Bay Area where I'm at in terms of workforce availability and resources. And I think there's a global effort to really make that happen. I think in the developing world, that is a critical aspect that never receives enough attention. And how can we take the workforce development and the technologies that we're developing in the so-called first world countries and really transform the landscape and jumpstart growth and economic development in the developing world? And I think that's incumbent upon the OECD to map that out. But I think the best way to do that is, of course, through public policy, private-public partnerships that can really be deployed in those local areas. And so I think the challenges are enormous. The opportunities are great. The resources are few right now, but we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And it's up to us to really take the next step forward and be bold and be inclusive in how we approach this problem, make it a whole world solution as opposed to a one nation solution. And I think you only do that through partnership and trust. And so I'm really looking forward through the conversation today. I think this is a great opportunity to raise all these issues and discuss them at length. And thank you again for the invitation. And I'll stop talking. Thank you, Peter.
Blake, thank you very much. That's excellent. You providing a lot of good and positive insights into US perception of bioeconomy. It's great to hear that the bioeconomy is also very important and innovation leader sector in the United States. Did I hear you correctly that you were saying 60% of the materials of our industrial basis could be produced biologically in the future?
Yes. I think they could be biologically produced today. It's a cost parity and a sustainability index on how good they can be, but the potential is certainly there. When you map out all the chemical manufacturing pathways and petroleum, I mean, petroleum is ubiquitous in our daily lives, and the oil refiners have done a majestic job of making that happen. And I'm a chemical engineer by training. I did my training in the Gulf Coast, so I know the petroleum folks really well. They're not out to destroy the planet, by the way. They are out to try and make the economy strong and tap into natural resources. I just think there's a better way to do it. And I think we can do that through biology. In the United States, there was a John Cumbers and some others in the Bay Area, in the state of California, I should say, developed this white paper on Built with Biology, where they really mapped this out in great detail. And I'd be happy to share that with the group and send it along. But I think it's a really good read and highlights some of the things that I touched upon. And if I may, Peter, I'd just like to add one other thing that is, I mentioned the oil refiners. COVID-19 has also indicated that business as usual in supply chains and interdependencies in economic sectors may not be a good thing all the time. And so in biomanufacturing, you have the ability to do distributed biomanufacturing, where you can go to where the carbon is and you can convert it locally and you can bolster the local economies and create supply chains that are robust and we'll say pandemic proof, if anything could be as such. But I think it's a new way to view manufacturing writ large, where conventional wisdom is you need to scale to make it work and make it profitable. I think with biology and chemistry working together, I don't think that's necessarily the case. And so it's another systems level perspective of how not only do we develop the technology, but what's the best way we can deploy it to address climate, economy, and human health. And yeah. So.
Great. Blake, thanks a million. There would be a million points where we would like to come into the discussion with you. I see two remarks. We have a few more minutes. One by Jean-Marie Chauvet. The difference between the bioeconomy approach in the US and the EU seems to be that health sector is part of the bioeconomy in the US. And then a question from Elsa. How do we strengthen the EPA to support the work of the bioeconomy while minimizing environmental impacts, which is also an important issue in Europe. What are your views on the letter, on the question from Elsa?
Yeah, well, and Jean-Marie brings up a really good point, and coming up with the standard definition of things matters, right? Words matter. And I don't want to get lost in a semantic policy debate on what the bioeconomy is. I think the opportunities are there no matter what vernacular you use to describe them. But it's a good point. And standardization, normalization, the language we speak is really important to facilitate knowledge transfer and sharing. Elsa's point is great. I will not entertain everyone with my personal political beliefs. But I will say that there is an opportunity with the change in administration to revisit decisions that were made in the past and assess their true impact, negative and positive, and correct course where necessary. And I think we have that opportunity now in the United States, and hopefully some of the things that I personally, as a scientist, didn't view as agreeable policy changes will have the opportunity to be corrected. And but it's going to take time. And but you're right. It points out where the intersection between policy and science and technology development really matter. Because if you create the wrong policy framework, you steer investment, you steer decision making, you steer public interest in a different way, and then the consequences can be severe. Okay. And yeah, so there you go.
No, I think this is also a very important dimension, also from the point of view of an official like myself, who is working in a department for research and innovation, this science policy interface, and that certainly is important for the entire bioeconomy. Thank you very much, Blake, up to here, and we look forward to seeing you back in the closing plenary, where we can hopefully come back to some of the issues we have already touched upon.
Thank you, Peter. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Blake. Up to here. Now, we originally had intended to invite Godfrey Nasamuyo, who is the director of the Songhai Center in Benin, to speak and take the floor and report us about the important work his center, the Songhai Center in Benin, is doing in view of the bioeconomy in West Africa. Unfortunately, Mr. Nasamuyo fell ill and therefore can't join us this afternoon. So therefore, I think we can directly move on to our third panelist of this opening panel, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Sinegugu Banda, who comes from South Africa. We have had last week also a meeting of the International Bioeconomy Forum, which the European Commission will co-chair together with South Africa next year. We therefore know that the bioeconomy is also a very important sector in South Africa. But now Sinegugu Banda is an EU All-Atlantic Youth Ambassador. So a youth ambassador for the importance of the Atlantic. You're currently finalizing your PhD on the blue bioeconomy and the link to ecosystems, and this is obviously also of interest in all regions who are connected here to this workshop. So it's excellent, Sinegugu, that you are connected. Let me ask you in your opening statement to explain to us what, from your point of view, the contribution of the blue bioeconomy can be to the recovery, and how then can we also engage the younger generations to be more involved in bioeconomy policies. Sinegugu, welcome again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Peter. Good evening, everyone. It's quite late here. It's already 6 p.m. My name is Sinegugu Banda, and I'm a final year PhD student at the Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. And as Peter said, my research focuses on quantifying coastal blue carbon in mangrove seagrasses and salt marshes, and also developing a payment for ecosystem services, a scheme for South Africa from which rural communities can benefit. And also I work on regenerative blue economy growth models, as well as climate change impacts and coastal wetland restoration in South Africa. I'm also an All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassador. Unfortunately, my term is coming to an end next month, beginning of next month. But for those who don't know, the All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassadors are basically a team of 23 early career researchers and professionals from 15 different countries connecting the Atlantic Ocean. And it's basically an initiative to promote youth international ocean action through sharing knowledge, enhancing ocean literacy and ocean protection. And it was developed under the framework of the Galway and Berlin statements. So just to also give a bit of background on the South African blue economy, which is what I predominantly work on. So the first blue economy framework was initiated in South Africa in June 2014, and it is called Operation Phakisa. And Phakisa means hurry up in one of our indigenous languages here in South Africa. And it's currently being led by the South African Department of Environment, Fisheries and Forestry. And it features various focus areas, such as aquaculture, coastal marine ecosystem, tourism, research development, as well as marine protection. So Operation Phakisa was aimed to increase jobs and for economic growth. And at the beginning, they had projected that the jobs would increase from about 320,000 to 1 million by the year 2023. And this was quite significant and important in South Africa because our country faces what we call the triple challenge. So poverty, inequality, and unemployment, especially those are the main challenges that are affecting the youth. And it's been happening for quite some time now because of our history of apartheid and segregation, and the inequality gap has widened over time. And obviously the COVID-19 pandemic brought about one of the world's strictest lockdowns here in South Africa. And it obviously has, it then caused youth unemployment to increase by 7.5%. And currently it's at its all-time high, where about 57% of the youth in South Africa are unemployed. So the blue economy for us it's not necessarily about increasing youth involvement and youth engagement, but also for job creation, which will improve a lot of the livelihoods of the youth. So in terms of what sort of activities can the youth be involved in terms of blue economy activities, definitely marine and coastal tourism, which has taken quite a knock during the pandemic, as a lot of our tourists attraction places such as Cape Town, big cities such as Durban have been closed down, and a lot of the infrastructure still needs some improvements. And also, some studies have shown that a lot of the youth don't actually have a lot of formal university education, and they don't really have the sufficient skills or any previous work experience that is required in the labor market. But those living in rural coastal marine areas, they have quite extensive indigenous and cultural knowledge of the ocean that has been passed down through generations, and the marine and coastal tourism sector can really tap into that knowledge and also engage the youth at the same time. And it sort of ties in with one of the three components. It ties in with one of the three components that we are working towards as the All Atlantic Youth Ambassadors, which is connecting and incorporating youth, arts, cultural practices, and storytelling to promote ocean literacy and ocean protection. And also, the youth can be more involved in the research and science part of the blue economy, because science is at the center of the blue economy. Maybe I'm being biased because I'm a scientist, but and also my institution, the Nelson Mandela University, has put itself forward as one of the leading educational institutions in South Africa, even in the continent, to promulgate blue economy initiatives. And they've established numerous research chair initiatives relating to ocean science, food security, law of the sea, marine spatial planning, as well as ocean culture and heritage. So getting the youth involved by doing postgraduate studies, master's, PhDs, and there is some funding from our national government for youth to study further. And then lastly, we can get them involved in marine protection and restoration activities. In South Africa, the most recent National Biodiversity Assessment has indicated that more than 50% of our coastal marine wetlands are in a degraded state because of habitat losses as a result of dredging, coastal development, harvesting, domestic browsing by cows and goats, and we've lost a lot of our mangroves, our salt marshes, our seagrasses, and there's a lot of restoration that still needs to be done. And we can get the youth involved in those restoration activities, such as replanting of mangroves. And in that way, we can also train the youth to share information to local communities in their indigenous languages, and also teach the key principles of ocean literacy, protection, etc. Also, just raising awareness on a broad range of career opportunities in the blue economy through social media platforms, since everything has sort of moved into this digital space. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Sinigugu, for thank you for.
I got a bit distracted by the questions about the slides.
That is completely fine. Thank you.
Okay.
for a very inspiring presentation, Sinagugu. That was excellent, because you did explain that the bioeconomy does play an important role in South Africa. You also highlighted for us the important links to the blue bioeconomy. You gave very good examples, and thirdly, you also made us optimistic that this is also an important topic for young people, for youth engagement. We will come back actually to this tomorrow during the lunchtime at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We will have a separate session on the bioeconomy youth champions. So we are trying to follow the good example of the All Atlantic Youth Ambassadors. But thank you here already, Sinagugu, for having joined us. We'll come back to you, and I'm sure many colleagues will have questions. Yes, we are behind schedule a little bit. We'll start the workshops in a second. Thank you, Sinagugu. We look forward to having you back in a minute. Let me also mention that Mary Maxon put here also a link to the Build with Biology paper, which Blake had also mentioned. Indeed, an excellent paper. Let me also mention the results from the second Slido poll. We had asked you in which sector or which organization are you representing, and as mentioned by Blake and by Sinagugu, we do have a very strong focus on research and universities, with 45 people coming from that sector. 20% colleagues listening in are from the public sector, and we have 18% from other sectors, 12% from the private sector, 3% consider them to be interested citizens, and 3% are media, and 1% NGO. So we have a good mix of people with a different background, and we look forward to more intensive discussions.
Let's get back to the breakout groups then, and some feedback from the 4 different representatives. So first of all, I would like to invite representatives from the Grand Est region and BioVoices to provide some short feedback from the discussions around the land-based bioeconomy. May I ask Ms. Rhonda Smith, Voices, to come to the floor? You have 3 minutes. It's very short, but we're looking forward to the summary.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And firstly, thank you to everybody who joined us in our workshop 1 for land-based bioeconomy. We had a very good representative sample of people there with us, from research, from business, from policy, and indeed from civil society. We endeavoured to make this as interactive as possible. So one of the important things, the most important interactive task we asked people to do was to rank 8 themes that we presented to them on Mentimeter, asking them to rank, in their opinion, which was the most important area that should be focused on in terms of the theme that would provide an answer to help us progress to ensuring that we had a good, productive solution to our COVID dilemma at the moment. We asked people to rank 8 themes, and we then went on to discuss 2 of the top-ranked themes. Interestingly, the 2 top-ranked themes, firstly was circularity, and secondly was communication. And interestingly, bottom number 8 was health, in terms of ensuring health of the community, and different ranks in the middle of technology, biorefineries, and other aspects. So the most important feedback, I think, when we went on to discuss both of these themes in turn, regarding ranking of number one, the circularity, was the fact that actually the whole process must be circular. Every single action that is going to be progressed has to have the active involvement of all stakeholders, and that nobody can be left behind, because if any stakeholder group is left behind, then there is the potential for their non-engagement, and even worst of all, at the bottom end of the spectrum, the prospect that perhaps a poor decision is made that means that the value chain will be broken. So I think that was our top point. We have the Miro still open, so people are still actually contributing to that, and we can obviously share that with the whole group. The second theme was about communications, and this was very active in terms of people's contribution to the discussion regarding this. One of the main points is that there has to be honest communication, that there has to be clear, there has to be hopefully the use of standardized terms and standardized language, which reflects something that Blake Simmons said early on in the discussion, that actually there should be no quick wins processed and progressed by industry, by greenwashing, for example, without absolutely understanding the consequences of the route that they're taking, and not being able to be honest and clear in their communications, again, with their suppliers, again, with the intermediaries, such as supermarkets, and also their end consumers. So I think that's, in quick summary, some of the key points. We had a very active discussion, and it was great to have so many different people in our room.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. I see Elizabeth is back online. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne, and good evening, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. More of a technical problem, but I'm glad I can share with you this very important announcement for us, because today the European Commission is officially launching the European Bioeconomy Monitoring System, as it was announced by the Bioeconomy Strategy 2018, 2 years ago. So in the next slides, Romain, if you can go further. The European Bioeconomy Monitoring System has been established as one of the key actions of the European Bioeconomy Strategy. And this Bioeconomy Strategy promotes the sustainable and circular use and the restoration of our biological resources in order to contribute to sustainable growth. As we have heard from our Director General, Mr. Paquet, the sustainable and circular bioeconomy plays a key role for the European Green Deal, which is our new European Union growth strategy to create jobs, reducing environmental impact, and ensuring a fair transition for all. So the bioeconomy is particularly important to drive this green transition towards a climate neutral economy, with the ambition of having Europe to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. And the European Bioeconomy Action Plans calls for actions to operate a bioeconomy within safe biological, ecological boundaries. And there is a series of actions foreseen by the action plan within this pillar, and one of them is exactly the establishment of a EU-wide and internationally compatible bioeconomy monitoring system, which will track progress along the 3 dimensions of sustainability, economic, social, and environmental. In the next slide, we see that we have built this bioeconomy monitoring system based on a conceptual framework which reflects the system approach of the EU bioeconomy strategy. So these 3 dimensions of the sustainability that I mentioned, environmental, economic, and social, which are interconnected and integrated in the concept of a European bioeconomy. Thus, the framework covers all sectors and systems of a bioeconomy, from the ecosystems on land and sea to the primary production systems, agriculture, forestry, fisheries and aquaculture, and the bio-based industries, and through all the steps of the value chains and all the dimensions of the sustainability. And in the next slide, we see the bioeconomy monitoring system. So the framework that we are using is monitoring the progress of a bioeconomy versus and against the 5 main objectives of a bioeconomy strategy in Europe, which are ensuring food and nutrition security, managing natural resources sustainably, reducing our dependence on fossil resources, strengthening the European competitiveness and creating jobs, and mitigating and adapting to climate change. So we are measuring progress also against the Sustainable Development Goals, because sustainability is the main driver of a European strategy. And each strategy objective is assessed using a series of normative criteria and principles which are internationally agreed. And here we have been closely collaborating with FAO, and we are currently building a series of new guidelines in this respect. So we are working, in the next slide, we see that we are assessing the bioeconomy progress. Well, in the next slide, I wanted to show that we are using, so we are assessing the progress of a bioeconomy against those 5 objectives. For each objectives, we have a series of normative criteria, and then we are using no less than 170 indicators to assess the progress across the different objectives of a bioeconomy strategy across the different sectors. So we use different type of indicators, from basic indicators to aggregated indicators which cut across different sectors. And we are also preparing to use in the future and in the near future composite and system level indicators. And all this reflects the complexity of a bioeconomy, which cuts across a very wide range of sectors and systems. Then in the next slide, I would like to show that we have been building this monitoring system with a participatory project carried out during the past 2 years, together with a wide range of stakeholders, with involvement of European Union member states, international organizations, and a series of experts from both the public and the private sector. And we are going to continue this process during the next year, because we have now online, we have actually a beta version, so a pilot version of the monitoring system, but we are going to enrich and continue the development during the next year in order to have a fully fledged monitoring system up and running by next year. And in the last slide, I would like to show, so now we have online, hosted in our European Commission Knowledge Center for the Bioeconomy, we are hosting the Bioeconomy Monitoring System. So you see that we have a series of interactive dashboards, which can lead you to have an analysis of a detail in different member states. So we have data at EU level, and then we have data on member states, and we are going to address also regional levels where possible. With this, I would like to conclude by thanking particularly my colleagues, Sara Mubareka, who is leading the Biomonitoring, Marios Avramides with his team of a Knowledge Center of a Bioeconomy, and thank you all for your attention, and I hope you will all get involved, interested in this information, and involved in the future of a system that we are building together. Thank you very much.
Elisabetta, let me just very briefly jump in between and say a big thank you to you for this excellent presentation of very, very important work. If we want to talk about the bioeconomy, we also need to know in more detail what we are talking about. And I think you have made it clear that the monitoring system you're building is transparent, it's holistic. So I think this is an important step forward. We have had also discussions of building or on monitoring systems for the bioeconomy in the International Bioeconomy Forum. So I think it's very important that all the work you and your colleagues have developed is also online and available to other colleagues please help us in developing that system further. Thank you. And with that, let me give back to Anne again.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Elisabetta, for an excellent presentation. I think this is what we need to really report on, but also to communicate what bioeconomy needs.
If I may just mention that on the last slide, the next slide, we have a website, and we invite you all to visit and to collaborate with us in this challenging system.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Let me now resume with the different feedbacks from the groups. We heard from BioVoices and Grand Est region. We will move to the Submariner network to provide some short 3-minute feedback from the discussion around the blue bioeconomy. Ms. Lisa Simon de Grant, please come forward.
So we had a 1-hour breakout session, which was, to be honest, a little bit rushed, but I think we got a lot of input. We had 4 short input presentations talking about blue bioeconomy sectors in Denmark, but also, for instance, in Sweden. And we tried to divide the session into 2 aspects, so to get concrete examples and good practices, and then the other one is to get kind of concrete recommendations or next steps also on an international EU level. So the most urgent recommendations that we thought of were to really try and invest in the acceptance and the willingness to enable the blue bioeconomy. And that means on the political level to really bring together relevant policy fields and to revise legislation as well as licensing procedures, because it is one thing to have these wonderful ambitions on the EU level, especially with regard to climate neutrality and the Green Deal, but that also means that on a lower level, documents and legislations and regulations need to be adapted to allow for this. On the other side of the coin, this also means that we have to invest on the consumer level in increased consumer awareness, as well as support for the blue bioeconomy. And this means, for instance, new products, fish that perhaps we normally don't eat that much, to increase their popularity. Some other things that we discussed is the unfortunate, really the still existence of NIMBY, not in my backyard. We are investing a lot in aquaculture, for instance, or in mussel farming, but people don't want to see them because it might ruin their view. So this also needs to really be tackled by a perhaps marketing or promotion campaign. Some other aspects, I'm trying to rush to stay in my 3 minutes. We really need to invest in education and skills that are necessary for the blue bioeconomy. And this includes farming for aquaculture and for mussel farming, but also, for instance, blue biotechnology. We should invest in low trophic aquaculture, especially. So again, these mussels and algae, and to use them, for instance, not only to eat them, but to use them in the feed industry. So for poultry, for chickens, or to feed aquaculture fish. Lastly, I will just mention as well that also really what makes the blue bioeconomy so beautiful and what we are trying to do with the Submariner network in the Baltic is to emphasize that if you have a mussel farm or an algae farm, you can really use this to combat eutrophication and to contribute to climate reduction goals. I think with that, I will get over to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Very interesting. I will now hand over to the next group, which is Power for Bio and Be Rural. Ms. Elsa Jean, would you like to join us up here? Please come forward.
Hi everybody. So my name is Elsa Jean and I'm involved with the Be Rural, but I asked to do a quick summary. And the session was very interactive. We used Mentimeter to get views from the attendees. And it was co-organized by the sister projects, Be Rural and Power for Bio. So I'm putting that in the chat just now, the web links, because the 2 projects have such an amazing set of resources that I think people will be interested to look at the 2 websites. So what we discussed a lot in terms of climate aspects and biodiversity aspects related to the bioeconomy. We had 30 people taking part from all over the world. They were mainly researchers and academia. We didn't have nobody, for example, from industry. I don't know if this is reflective of the summit overall, but we need to engage with industry. But in our workshop, we didn't have any industry people. So we discussed what specific bioenergy transitions approaches would lead to the biggest reduction of greenhouse emissions in the next 10 years. And we discussed issues like biogas from food waste and transformation of CO2, etc. I can't say everything that we've discussed because it was quite a lot. Then we discussed also hurdles that prevent improvement of recycling rates of packaging, and that would lead to new high quality products. And in one hand is about design and is about technology, for example, using more mono materials rather than multi-layer packaging. But on the other hand, is things as simple as better labeling, so and also education. So it's quite a wide range of potential solutions that can need to be addressed. So we also talked about, very importantly, if we are using biomass and then extracting the biomass, do we going to have a problem with soils that are going to be deprived of nutrients? And how can we make sure that the nutrients go back into the soil? So again, we talked about the potential strategies in terms of organic farming, in terms of particular nutrients that are needed in particular regions, and algae for fertilizing, etc. So then we discussed adverse impacts that the bioeconomy may have on society and environment, and how can we prioritize, what strategies need to be prioritized, and different strategies that we can have from that, including avoiding negative impacts on biodiversity in ecosystems and importance of change in commodity prices. Then we talked about best practices, and in terms of addressing trade-offs. Obviously, trade-offs tie in very closely with thresholds, so and something to pay attention. The Netherlands apparently has a new sustainability rules for the use of biomass, but is only available in Dutch at this point in time. And then we talked about consensus between actors when tackling environmental, social, and economic trade-offs in terms of sharing good practice examples and dialogue. We talk about priorities to attract international partners and also local partners for bioeconomy. And then finally, we talked about education. What education priorities should we have in terms of bioeconomy? And the one interesting enough that came top was sustainability and biodiversity. So it was very, very lively discussion, and thanks for everybody that took part. And I'm sure we're going to do a summary of all the things that we discussed.
Thank you, Elsa. That was a very interesting story. I forgot to say before we have the last speaker, if all 4 representatives from the group could stay with us for the final plenary discussion as well. Okay, thank you, Elsa. Let me now call on the last group from BioEast Up to provide some feedback from the discussion around the role of bioeconomy for emerging economies. Mr. Stelios Rosakis, please join me here on the panel. Hello, Stelios.
So we tried to use resources and people from the BioEast Up project that is about representing all 11 BioEast countries, Central Eastern Europe, to develop bioeconomy strategies, mostly not existing as national strategies. We try to make it interesting for any country in the world that has not so far has a strategy. And we presented the process of using evidence on existing policies, on how one can find synergies, conflicts, and trying to manage to come with coherence, and out of those policies to come up with a coherent strategy on that. We use the objectives. We point out objectives and priorities that exist already and where those countries want to go, and present indicators that those two elements in interaction with stakeholders can be used to come up with strategies. So the questions set by the organizers, I will try to give an idea how we approach those questions. First of all, we had, of course, participants from Bio-East countries, but also from Mexico, Malawi, Spain, and other countries that are far away. Most of the participants are with either academia or research and public sector. We had some few participants from private sector and industry. Most of them focus on agriculture and bioenergy and bioraffinery. Some on management economics, digital economy. First of all, most people think that indicators and monitoring bioeconomy can definitely help policymakers to evaluate bioeconomy against aims, goals, and targets, and to inform the public about the progress of bioeconomy, which is important for public awareness. Then climate change and agricultural policies, climate mitigation policies are the most relevant policies that present synergies for circular and sustainable bioeconomy. Of course, there are other policies. Education policies are lagging behind, so this is an impression of people attending the workshop, and I have to say that our presentation in the breakout room basically simulated what we do in all 11 Bio-East countries. So, and I have to say that the results of the Mentimeter are quite realistic. So I go forward to say that the most important pathway to bioeconomy was mentioned as focusing on efficiency, increasing efficiency on biomass utilization, and then second, creation of value based on advanced biological principles and processes. So to come to the questions, the first one, which kind of investment would give more resilient economies and stimulate growth after post-COVID. We had the focus on sustainable and resilient agricultural and food systems. This is first by far. And then the second priority is the waste, capturing the waste and byproduct streams. Another thematic on the same question would be to support and strengthening for emerging bioeconomy players, startups, national and regional biohubs and clusters. So that gives the importance of research and innovation agenda. But the trade-offs we had on the most important trade-offs that to be considered. The first of all, is biodiversity, employment, and there is apparently a trade-off to find. So environmental sensitivity and at the same time social priorities that need to be somehow married. Then let me see, in the last question, what is the opinion on the most important contribution of national level bioeconomic governance to the transformative climate action? I can give you some keywords. Boost innovation, education investment, providing overarching flagship priority for biomass-based carbon use, then rational use of biomass and decarbonization, so we are in the line of efficiency. And finally, some more, let's say, specific things like microbiome applications replacing complementing and fertilizer, alternative proteins that could solve a couple of challenges, including greenhouse gas emission reduction. So there are, I think, our information, evidence provided is quite, let's say, incites people to come up with very specific ideas, and this is the whole approach of our project, to achieve interactions with stakeholders so that strategies will be at the same time coming from top in the sense of guidance, but also at the same time getting a lot of input from the bottom. So that's more or less our approach, and this is what we are about in the first period of our project, and we are moving forward to come up with strategy propositions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stelios. Very interesting results. I see Peter, we're a bit behind time. I've done a bad job in timekeeping, I know. Peter, over to you for the last session.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Stelios, for these excellent summaries of the breakout sessions. All four of them seem to have had very lively and good debates on our major topic. What is, from your point of view, the major opportunity the bioeconomy has to offer in the recovery context? Here are the results from the overall last Slido question. Sustainability is at the heart of what this audience, the participants of this workshop, expect that the bioeconomy can deliver, can contribute to the recovery process. Green growth is mentioned, resilience, but it's also mentioned that trust is important, and grasping the opportunities, creating new jobs, informed policy. All these conditions indicate it's complex, but I also think it underlines that the participants confirm basically what we have started out with, the assumption that the bioeconomy has great potential. Let's, we are behind schedule, but let's still take 15 minutes or so to invite the two panelists from the opening panel to come back, and Sinegugu Banda and Blake Simmons. I see that you are still connected. Would you like to come back, Sinegugu, maybe first, and say what is from your point of view, what have you heard, and what encourages you? How could the bioeconomy practices really play a role also in the recovery process in countries like South Africa and other emerging economies. Sinagugu, would you like to come back?
What I haven't really heard come across is maybe identifying sort of existing local, for example, like operational small, medium, micro enterprises, and how they can contribute towards a regenerative and inclusive blue economy, and how we could possibly incorporate these SMMEs into national blue economy strategies, and maybe even replicating and scaling these models could make a significant contribution, especially in South Africa, because of the high unemployment rates. As I said, a lot of youth are sort of are shifting towards starting their own small businesses close to our oceans and coasts. So I think one of the solutions is to look into these and then looking at upscaling instead of starting with completely new ideas. Yeah, that's all from me.
Excellent points, Sinagugu. Thank you very much. We'll continue. We'll wrap up in view of the outcome. Maybe let me just guide you through the closing slide. Mary Maxon also just informed us that Blake Simmons unfortunately cannot come back. But overall, the discussions have shown that the COVID crisis, on the one hand, has shown fragility of linear business models and global supply chains. And I think overall, the speakers, the participants agreed that there's a proven need to bounce back through a green and more resilient recovery. There was wide agreement that sustainable and circular bioeconomy has and can play a major role in aligning the economy with the biosphere. And the bioeconomy should also feature prominently in national recovery plans. I think we didn't conclude on that last point that will keep us busy also for the next year.
Well, thank you everybody for your active participation, meaning you as participants, but also the speakers, of course, panelists, and the organizers in the back. I would just like to highlight a couple of points here at the end. I think what is very clear also from the discussions here today, that bioeconomy, at least I can say that from the FAO perspective, will really remain high on the agenda of FAO. Food systems play a very important part for the bioeconomy. If you take the European Union as an example, food systems add total value of more than 2/3 to the EU bioeconomy, just as an example. While the food system today provides the highest value added to the bioeconomy globally, food systems are a major driver of climate change and the planet's unfolding environmental crisis. Food systems contribute up to nearly 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions, significant biodiversity loss, water stress, and soil degradation. Hence, we all have to work together to develop a more sustainable food system in which the problem of food and nutrition security for a growing world population will be addressed in a sustainable and in a climate-friendly way. Let me just remind you, 690 million people in the world, that's nearly 10% of the world's population, are estimated to have been undernourished in 2019. And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic is likely to increase this figure by no less than 130 million people this year. 100 million children still suffer from wasting or stunting, and billions of people cannot afford a healthy diet. A growing population and rising incomes will lead to an increase in demand for agricultural products by 35 to 50% by 2050. That's what the statistics tell us. At the same time, food loss and waste remain a key issue. COVID-19 has brought to light the importance of safeguarding ecosystem health for human well-being and preventing systemic risks affecting our agri-food systems. The degradation of habitats and loss of biodiversity associated with agriculture and animal production are linked directly to the underlying causes of COVID-19 and increasing the number of zoonotic diseases. A recent global survey indicated that over 1 in 6 young people surveyed have stopped working since the onset of COVID-19 crisis. Therefore, recovery plans for the pandemic have to address both the environmental causes and the economic consequences and offer green growth and jobs for the most vulnerable groups. Just to close, let me highlight that these issues will be addressed at the next year's UN World Food System Summit, one of the key events for the bioeconomy in 2021. With this, I would like to close. Thank you very much for participating here today. I'll hand over to Peter for the last words.
Thank you very much, Anne. This was excellent. Thank you for making the link to the food systems, to the UN Food Systems Summit next year, in which I expect and I hope some of the discussions we have had here today will also come back. I think that's a very good connection. Let me at the start say thank you to all the panelists and everyone else for your participation. We were more than 110 participants in the beginning. We are now down to around 70 people. Thanks for your great interest in spite of some of the difficulties we've had due to connectivity. The digital gods were with us. Overall, the workshop went relatively well. Let me therefore also say specifically thank you to the Global Bioeconomy Summit organizing team and the technical experts behind the screens for having made available this virtual room and the platform. That was fantastic. I took home a lot of inspiring examples of scalable solutions which could be enshrined in principle in the recovery packages. I think on the what we have heard quite a lot. We have also heard on the how that yes, regional national strategies are important for the bioeconomy itself, but also in the context of the recovery packages. I hope when the discussion on recovery and how to get out of this economic crisis will become more dynamic, all of you will feed into your national, your regional discussions the case of the bioeconomy, choose the bioeconomy for a green and sustainable recovery. I think could be one of the major take-home messages from this event. Hence, please channel these ideas into the recovery packages. The European Commission will also organize a big bioeconomy conference towards the end of next year, and I'll invite all participants to continue this important discussion. Let me say again, thank you to all the participants. Thank you to my co-chair, but specifically let me thank Roman Brenner, who has been the director and the captain of this event. Thank you all and have a very nice evening. And we look forward to seeing you to the plenary sessions of the Global Bioeconomy Summit, which will start tomorrow. We hope we'll stay in contact. Bye-bye.